There's still a lot of options out there on the relief market and free agency. Who do we have on our wish list? We'll tell you in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can find us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work over at Sports Radio 810 WHB, still trying to deal with this snowstorm that passed through Kansas and Missouri, and really for the most of the Midwest, I'd imagine. And I think it's even made its way down south. So everybody, it seems like, around the country is dealing with a snowstorm, at least in the Midwest for sure. But I've been going into the studio, been trying to prep for some podcast work here. Thankfully, didn't have any power outages, so we'll be able to bring you our normal amount of podcasts each and every week. So we are very excited to be continue doing that all the way up until about February 10th, which is when we'll be back up to 5 episodes a week. But again, that's a little background on me if you are that first-time listener. And for those new listeners, tomorrow will be a Mailbag Friday. So if you want to send in questions, either leave it in the comment section here on this YouTube video, or you can also send me a direct message or respond to one of my tweets at JohnnyJ_15. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Today in Major League Baseball was the deadline for arbitration deals to see if teams would be able to settle with a player or if they would actually take it a step further and battle it out a little bit more over maybe $500,000 or a couple million. So a lot of teams were busy with that, but that doesn't mean that free agency hasn't been roaring on. And the stove isn't as hot as we anticipated early on here in January, but there's still plenty of time for things to heat up. We know there's still some big name free agents out there that have yet to sign, whether that be from a lack of interest or the price tag is too high on some of these players. Just not a lot of movement right now. And we're getting closer. We're nearing 30 days until pitchers and catchers report to spring training, which we will talk about a little bit more in the final segment. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure you can already tell what we are going to be talking about in the final segment today. But there is one area of free agency that I know we've talked about before this offseason, and nothing has really changed when it comes to that area, and that's the relief market. You talk about the stove being hot for some areas out there, starting pitching, position players, backup players, role players, the trade market. Those have all been significantly hotter, even though it hasn't been a typical type of hot stove. But they've all been hotter than the relief market. And we just haven't seen much traction there. If you have watched my episodes before, you would know how much I take interest in the relief market. I think that pretty much every team in baseball is able to afford a high-level arm in the bullpen. But also the best part about it is you don't need to acquire expensive relievers to make your bullpen good. I think one of my favorite bullpens over the last handful of years, really since I've been doing this podcast, and the way they assembled it was Detroit. I thought the Tigers in the division did some of the best jobs out there in assembling their team, but specifically with their bullpen, I thought that they did an excellent job in finding talent where maybe nobody else was looking, finding talent within their own organization, developing starters into relievers. They did it flawlessly, in my opinion, and it was a big reason why they were able to be so good late in the season in 2024. But for the Royals, I think there are a lot of guys to like in the bullpen for 2025. And I think there's some blocks for the bullpen in 2025. It also doesn't mean that they need to be done adding to the bullpen, because with the way the market is gone, they can absolutely still be in play for a handful of guys. And I think they'd be more than affordable on a one-year deal. I don't think there is anybody other than Tanner Scott, maybe, And I would also say Jeff Hoffman, that they'll be outpriced by. We've talked a little bit about Jeff Hoffman before. I know some reporters out there and writers have said that the Royals could be a fit. I think he's going to want more than a 2-year deal. I think he's going to want more than $12 million on that deal. In fact, I think he's going for the Clay Holmes type deal, and Clay Holmes is going to be a starter. So Jeff Hoffman may want to be doing that, and unfortunately, that might price out the Royals. However, for our wish list that I assembled, I think there's still a lot of guys out there that you could bring in on a 1-year deal, and who knows, the later they wait around, those could become minor league deals where you're just paying them the bare minimum, spring training invite, they fight for a spot. I mean, there are still the tier 2 guys that I think a lot of teams are going to be interested in. I count Kenley Jansen into that. I count Ryan Presley into that. I count David Robertson in that. But then there's kind of that tier 3 level that might be more so what the Royals are going to be looking for. Now, I will say I got a couple tier 2 guys on there. In fact, one of them I just brought up who I think would be a great fit, and that's David Robertson. And, David Robertson is going to be entering his age 40 season. He had a ton of strikeouts last year for Texas in about 75-ish innings. I think he was one strikeout away from 100, if I'm correct on that. But the cutter, incredibly effective, has been his best pitch. He's got the knuckle curve, and I believe back in like the mid-2010s, he called it the Snapdragon curveball. Still pretty effective. And I think he's somebody that's going to be looking for a 1-year deal. I think that pairs nicely with what the Royals could be looking for. I'd imagine the price range is going to be anywhere from $5 to $8 million. I could be a little bit off base on that. Right now, the AAV they have on Spotrac for him is $11.5 million. If it was a 1-year deal, I think I'd still be all right in doing that. But I'd imagine the Royals are going to be waiting for the price to come down a little bit on that, because they just gave Michael Lorenzen a $7 million deal. He'd be making $5.5 million toward the payroll for 2025. Paying double that for a reliever, a 1-inning guy, that might be overdoing it a little bit. And that also, to me, is why I think that the market hasn't been as positive for relievers out there. But he's an option I have here on a wish list. Another guy I have up here is Carlos Estevez. I think the Royals were interested last trade deadline, went from Anaheim to Philadelphia, and he was a part of a infamous moment in Philadelphia Phillies postseason history with Francisco Lindor having the dagger, the grand slam to knock out the Phillies in that divisional round series. But I still think Carlos Estevez could be a good piece for the back end of that bullpen, brings a little bit of the velocity. I think for the most part has decent control. And I think if you paired him alongside Lucas Erceg, same thing goes for David Robertson. Just takes a little bit of pressure off Hunter Harvey being a really good setup guy. I think you could ease him into that role, and having somebody else that you feel pretty strongly about in the 7th or the 8th inning, I think it takes a ton of pressure off a guy that you are putting a lot of pressure on right now, which is Hunter Harvey. He wasn't effective last year for the Royals when they brought him over. Going into spring training, they absolutely need him to be more effective. I think somebody like David Robertson or Carlos Estevez would be just fine for that job. A bounce-back candidate I absolutely love, was so effective for the Diamondbacks 2 years ago in their World Series run, Paul Sewald. I think Paul Sewald, with the angle that he brings, would be very comparable to what John Schreiber has done for the Royals, but more back-end experience, more late-inning relief experience than John Schreiber has. I know Schreiber would throw in the 6th and the 7th, the 8th, but I think that's more so what he needs to be. He needs to be more of the fireman type. I know Lucas Erceg is technically the Royals fireman guy, but if you brought in the Paul Sewald, I think you have more of a true 7th inning guy. John Schreiber can really come in whenever you need him to. Then you'd have Hunter Harvey and Lucas Erceg for the back end of the bullpen. So those 3 guys on my wish list as well. I thought about Tommy Kahnle a little bit. I don't have a lot of hope that the Royals will be able to get a deal done with Tommy Kahnle. I think it'd be a home run type of deal. You're talking about serious power in the back end of the bullpen. I just see him returning to the Yankees, quite honestly. But I really do think it would be a pipe dream. And it's crazy because his AAV is $5.75 million. That's more than affordable for what the Royals could be looking for. But with this relief market, they're probably asking for more than that, which is why a deal hasn't been struck. but I throw him on my list kind of as a dark horse candidate, if you will. I think a left-hander that would be great for the bullpen would be Andrew Chafin. Was great, in my opinion, for Detroit last year, then went over to Texas. I don't believe had as much success. The numbers, I think, to the eye test are not going to be as impressive, but I think he could be one of those guys late in January, early February, doesn't have a deal where you give him a one-year deal, maybe right around that $4 to $5 million range. I think you'd feel pretty good about him joining that bullpen. I think he's still got a lot of good swing and miss stuff there. And I don't have many lefties on this list. I really just have one or two more guys here. But to me, I think Andrew Chafin would be a really good pickup late into the offseason there. And then if you're really going for kind of a long shot bounce back, and maybe not all these guys are long shots. I've always liked Lucas Sims' curveball, liked it more so in Cincinnati. Then was with Boston this past year, a little bit younger than the guys that I've been bringing up. Maybe you could strike a one-year deal, prove it deal, come in, and the Royals like what he can do with the curveball. I know that was kind of their focus last offseason and searching for a handful of guys for the bullpen. Lucas Sims kind of fits that mold a little bit. So he'll be on my list as well here. And then you have two lefties to close out my list here that I do think would be very intriguing options. You have Colin Poche. You have the familiarity with Tampa Bay, some of the coaching staff, of course, originating from there, has that big power curveball. And for a while in Tampa Bay's bullpen, was a guy they would turn to a lot. Not so great this past year. But again, when you're talking about building a bullpen, sometimes it is those bounce back guys. Then you have Danny Kalum, who's with Baltimore last year, dealt with injuries a little bit, but like Poche, like Chafin, like Lucas Sims, has that big bender, has that good curveball. If you can have the good spin rate on it, I think the Royals would really take a liking to it. So those two lefties out there, I think would be fun ideas for a little bit of a bounce back. And if I missed anybody or I said somebody that has already signed somewhere, I do apologize. But those were kind of some of the guys that I brought up today with a couple different people, and also just wrote them down on a little list here that I've been going off of. You also have some names like Tim Hill, Jorge Lopez, former Royals. That wouldn't be bad additions. You could have somebody like a Shelby Miller, Jake Diekman, another former Royal right there from the left side. Shelby Miller with Detroit last year wasn't as good, but I believe 2 years ago was pretty effective. You're going to see some deals like that out there where you get closer to spring training, closer to when pitchers and catchers report. Those guys don't have deals. Might be a minor league deal, might be a very cheap one-year deal, but I do believe there's a handful of names out there that should be interesting to the Royals and maybe trying them out in spring training and earning a job in that bullpen, because I just think they need a little bit more depth. But those are some of the guys on our wish list. If you've got anybody on your wish list, let us know right in the comment page below, or let us know on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. We're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, is Taylor Ward actually going to get traded, or is this all just going to be a smokescreen when it's said and done? That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our first sponsor today in Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Definitely happened to me, and I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even know I was paying for. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved over a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Maybe the biggest talking point of this offseason has been, at least when it comes to Royals fans, has been, is Taylor Ward going to get traded or not? I have had more than, I think, 2 episodes this offseason that have been dedicated to Taylor Ward, because I believe he truly is a perfect fit for this lineup. I think he's exactly what the Royals have said they're looking for. They've talked about power in the lineup, adding more pop. He had 25 bombs last year. They've talked about consistency. He's had a above league average WRC plus the last 4 years. They've talked about a guy who can get on base a little bit better. It's not as good as what Jonathan India's numbers are, but still I think it was a 325 to 330 clip last year. You take that over what you were getting in the outfield. But the question keeps going back to, what are the Angels thinking? Do the Angels really want to move him? And I think what I've said multiple times is, it doesn't really feel like the Angels are selling. It doesn't feel like they are a team that are screaming, we're selling all of our pieces, we're trying to reload this year. Because they've gone out there and traded for Jorge Soler. They went out there and got Travis d'Arnaud. They spent money on Yusei Kikuchi. They've spent money on some other arms here and there. Like, nothing has truly screamed, we're going to be in a rebuilding phase, because I don't believe there's any more phases in baseball of tanking, because tanking does you no good. If you lose 150 games, I know that's not realistic, but if you did, no guarantee you get the number 1 overall pick. You'll just have the best odds to, and those odds still aren't that convincing when it's all said and done. But Taylor Ward, to me, is a guy that I feel like the Royals have had their tabs on longer than most teams. And maybe the market is bigger than I think it is for Taylor Ward. Maybe it's not that big at all. Maybe the asking price is much higher. But it just feels like one of those deals that the Royals are going to do everything in their power to get done once they get that asking price into a wheelhouse. Because when we've gone over options before of what they're looking for a middle of the order bat, and why I believe they've been so patient, because they're not going to jump to plan B, plan C, plan D, E, F, G, H, I, whatever it would be, if that plan A option was still on the table. If that plan A option is still on the table, then I don't think they're going to pivot as quickly as maybe us fans would like for them to. Because if they do pivot on January 9th, January 10th, there's still a lot of offseason to go where they could strike a deal. And if the Angels do move Taylor Ward, now you look a little bit foolish that you couldn't wait it out just a little bit longer. To me, it's about who blinks first. I think the Angels are trying to have a desperate team jump to them. I mean, they just settled their arbitration case with Taylor Ward today. I think it was just under $8 million. But they're waiting for somebody to jump the gun. They don't want to wait any longer. They want to get their lineup, their roster assembled before pitchers and catchers report. And to me, that's why a lot of teams haven't really been mentioned when Taylor Ward's name has come up. I think a lot of teams just aren't progressing on a deal, but at some point that team that's trying to move the player has to get more desperate. They have to strike a deal because that player might have their peak value right now. And the Angels do have a bit of a roster crunch right now. Taylor Ward makes them better. It's no doubt about it. But Mike Trout's going to be coming back. And all belief is that Mike Trout's not going to be in center field every single day. They've also said that Jorge Soler is going to be playing a lot of the corner outfield spots, probably in right field. So you could have Mike Trout there in left field. You'd have Jorge Soler in right field. You have a couple guys that can play center field, and Taylor Ward's not really an everyday center fielder. He's more of a corner outfield guy where they'd want to be putting Mike Trout a lot. So knowing they have a roster crunch, the teams that are trying to acquire him understand that he probably is going to get moved. Maybe that changes. Maybe Taylor Ward plays more center field. Maybe Mike Trout plays more center field. Or maybe, no, Jorge Soler really isn't going to play that much right field. He'll be more of a DH. But if you wait that out and you get it done, I think that's the move that everybody's going to feel satisfied with. I've had people ask me questions about, what about this guy? I think Austin Hayes' name has come up. Brett Beatty's name has come up. I don't think those are bad options on one-year deals, or if you traded for Brett Beatty, you wouldn't have to give up a ton. But they're not the guy that moves the needle. When the Royals went into this offseason, they wanted two big-time contributors for the lineup because they lost in the postseason because that lineup just wasn't strong enough. There were too many holes in the lineup. So how do you want to fill that middle of the order bat? Is it going to be somebody on a bounce-back deal? Is it going to be somebody that has a high ceiling but has never really shown it? Or do you want somebody that you feel pretty good about what they can give you in 2025? You have a track record of a guy with 4 really strong seasons in a row. Not 1, not 2, not even 3. 4 pretty good seasons in a row. Last year, 25 home runs, right? Can hit at the top of the order, can hit in the middle of the order, can play multiple positions. A significant upgrade over what you have in the outfield. And that, to me, is why there's been this patience. The Royals are not going to pivot to their second, third, or fourth plan when that guy's still out there. If Taylor Ward gets acquired tomorrow by somebody, maybe it's Seattle, maybe it's Cincinnati, maybe it's Pittsburgh. All those teams I feel like have been linked to him at one point in time. But if all of that happens, then you can turn to the next guy. But with this trade market kind of having slim options out there, I just don't know who else perfectly fits that mold. I brought up J.J. Bleday a few weeks, maybe it was a month ago or so. I don't see Oakland moving him now because they're trying to build a younger core together. He fits that for them. But Taylor Ward is that unknown right now. Are the Angels actually trying to win? Because if they are, Taylor Ward helps them win games. If they're more honest with themselves and they know that they can get value for him now and fill other areas of need, then they will strike a deal. But to me, I mean, I still have growing confidence that a deal will be done. And I just feel like the Royals have Taylor Ward in their sights. I think that if you were to ask me honestly, this is total speculation. If there was a list out there, there was a wish list, or there was a guy that they have circled or highlighted, whatever you want to say, I think Taylor Ward's number 1 on that list. And I think that he is affordable. It's more so about just making sure you're not giving up too much for a guy that would only probably be here for this year and the next year, like Jonathan India. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll tell you what's coming up for us next month. We're very excited about it. Again, if you've been watching on YouTube, you probably know where we're going with this. But that's coming up next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our final and our title sponsor today in Gametime. Now, Gametime has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets at an upcoming game using the Gametime app. With Gametime Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view of my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply, so again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. Well, a little bit of news that we wanted to share with you guys before a Mailbag Friday tomorrow. Well, it'll be completely dedicated to you, the listener. I've already gotten a couple questions early on. Excited to get to those tomorrow. But to close out our show today, wanted to talk a little bit about what we have in store, some schedule updates of what we're planning to do. A reminder that going to February 10th, I believe it is, we'll be back to 5 episodes a week. So about a month from now, we'll be back to normal, bringing you episodes every single day of the week, unless there was a random change out there, but that will be the plan. There might be some weeks or some days where it's a little bit different because I'll be on vacation. We'll be taking a ski trip toward the end of February, so that week will be a little bit different. But actually, right before that vacation trip, I will be heading back to Surprise, Arizona for spring training. We'll be covering the Royals down there for a couple days right after pitchers and catchers report and right before the first full squad workout. And I think we'll see at least 2 days of the full squad workout. So I'll be down there, plenty of interviews, plenty of video, tons of coverage. You can follow me just here on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter. If you watched us there last year, we were able to get a good chunk of stuff out there. But what I was pretty disappointed in, mainly just myself, was that didn't have the best connection to do episodes down there. That's going to be completely different this go around. I'll be able to bring you timely episodes. We'll be doing a better job about interviews out there and how we're going to be doing them. Therefore, we'll be able to bring that to you guys more than just the typical comment or two on Twitter or a post about what a player said. I want to be able to give you guys as much possible coverage as I can. Last year was more of a trial, in my opinion. Last year was a little bit more complicated because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to be walking into. But now I have a better grasp about how things work, what to expect. So yeah, tons of video, tons of coverage, tons of interviews. Should be a great time, and there should be a lot of guys down there that I would be thrilled to talk to, whether it be a minor league guy or whether it be a new guy or somebody that's been there for quite some time. But that will be our plan for, I think, the middle part of February for a few days. And again, will be a little bit different later on in that week about what episodes we do have. But there will be plenty of stuff to go over there. And then going into the regular season, we should have some exciting things in store. Going to be trying to travel a little bit more and go to some different games as long as they match up with my work schedule. But that should be something else that you all can look forward to, a little bit more interviews. And I still do think that before spring training happens, we're going to have some more episodes that have interviews out there, whether it just be for 15 or 20 minutes. If that's the only thing we have for that day, that'll be the plan. But I know I did promise that in the off season that once we got down to 3 episodes a week, we were going to try to get a couple more shows where we had an interview, whether it be a minor league player, big league player, or a coach. Still think that we're going to be able to have a couple of those episodes before spring training happens. So that is something to have in store, to bookmark a little bit. But that is kind of our big news of this week. We'll probably be putting a post out tomorrow at some point. But if there's anything in particular, I kind of want to incorporate the listeners. You guys have been great, the followers over the last 2 years. I do want to incorporate a little bit of what you guys may want to know, what you guys may be looking for. Now, I can't guarantee or promise everybody out there that I'll be able to get to their question or get to their coverage, a player they want to see take batting practice or a pitcher be throwing. I can't guarantee anything, but if there is an opportunity to, have a listener or follower ask for a video or an interview or a question to be asked, I would love to be able to help out, because that kind of is my hope for this thing again, is to have that connection between the fans and me being down there, because I know not everybody can make that trip to spring training. If you haven't done it before, it's absolutely thrilling, not just in a work environment, but to go down there as a fan, watch some of those games, absolutely thrilling. You're so close to the field. It's such a great experience. It's truly just baseball, where you go to a normal game, there's lots of gimmicks, there's a giant jumbotron, there is a scoreboard out there, but it's very baseball oriented, which if you are a baseball nut, you love doing that. I've talked to a lot of people that go to spring training every single year. That's something they love to do because of how personal the game feels. And that's what we're going to try to do this time around. We're going to try to make it more personal for the loyal fans, the loyal listeners out there, of bringing you great coverage, bringing you more interviews, making those available. Because I know last year I did not do a good job of getting those episodes up. There was one time I did an entire 30-minute episode and I didn't have the audio on. So that was a total waste to do. There were a couple of episodes that I just didn't have the best camera quality, best connection. I'll be bringing my camera down this time around. I'm going to be bringing some extra stuff, extra equipment to make sure the connection is good. But that will be what we look forward to next month. Again, middle part of February, really right after pitchers and catchers report and during the first full squad workout, we will be down there bringing you coverage for Locked On Royals for the second straight year. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB as baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, it'll be a Mailbag Friday, so send your questions below on the YouTube video here, or you can send them to me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.